and welcome. I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. The number of coronavirus cases around the world has topped 1 million, while the number of confirmed deaths passed 51,000. About 60% of fatalities reported worldwide have come from 4 European countries: Italy, Spain, France, and Britain. Officials from Italy and Spain reported early signs that rates of infection, hospitalization, and deaths are stabilizing in their nations, though their governments announced a combined total of more than 1,700 new coronavirus-related cases on Thursday. The official number of coronavirus cases in Ecuador has passed 3,100, while the number of deaths stands at 120. However, citizens, especially in the hardest hit city of Guayaquil, accuse the government of downplaying the numbers. Our correspondent, Denise Herrera, has more.
According to the government, Ecuador has now 3,163 cases of coronavirus and 120 deaths. This was official information given by the authorities. Recently, the president of Ecuador, Lenín Moreno, announced that he is asking to all the authorities to reveal the truth about the numbers of COVID-19 in the country. This decision came after the complaints made by the citizens from Guayaquil, who are still denouncing that they don't know how to handle this sanitary crisis in the city, as well as the local media that are reporting that these official numbers made by the authorities are not true. To this crisis also, the medical staff in the country have denounced that they don't have the personal protection equipment to face this sanitary crisis. This is information we have for now. Back to you at the studios.
Meanwhile, Ecuadorian President Lenín Moreno has admitted that official statistics about the number of COVID-19 cases in the country fall short of the reality. Has quickly become the worst hit country in the region. Yet many agricultural producers, especially from indigenous organizations, continue to work to provide for the rest of the country despite the risk of getting infected. Ecuador's National Indigenous Umbrella Organization, CONAIE, has been coordinating a nationwide response to the crisis.
We don't have such resources as the government, but we have done all that we could to coordinate with all of our organizations. For example,
Let's go to a short break now. Don't go away.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests and motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed there. Critical Move investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on Telesur.
Então, pra gente, a terra é sagrada. A gente quer cuidar da terra. Só quem liga para dinheiro, como um fazendeiro, garimpeiro, para uso próprio.
Telesur Reports presents.
O mundo inteiro preocupado com o planeta, o Brasil não. Nossos parentes pedindo ajuda.
Fighting Fire, the indigenous struggle for the Amazon.
Papai tarmanha tá caindo. E o atirte na neve de na o guaca é.
Premiere Saturday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. More news now. Ecuadorian President Lenín Moreno has admitted that official statistics about the number of COVID-19 cases in the country fall short of the reality.
Don't minimize the severity of this crisis. I have asked that all information, however painful it may be made public. We have to tell the truth. We are aware that official records fall short regarding COVID-19 cases and deaths. The reality always outgrows the numbers of tests and the speed in which attention is drawn. Other countries have suffered from it, and now it happened to Ecuador, especially in Guayaquil. According to scientists, we have thousands of infections and hundreds of people dead due to the virus, although some cases are reported as a suspicion.
And as we've mentioned before, Ecuador has quickly become the worst hit country in the region. Yet many agricultural producers, especially from indigenous communities, continue to work to provide for the rest of the country despite the risk of getting infected. Ecuador's National Indigenous Umbrella Organization, CONAIE, has been coordinating a nationwide response to the crisis.
We don't have such resources as the government, but we have done all that we could to coordinate with all of our organizations, for example, in the Cotopaxi province, where the president of the indigenous movement of Cotopaxi is also implementing a community action plan to help our brothers and sisters living in the cities, and in other provinces as well, from Bolivar to the Ecuadorian coast. And at CONAIE, we are also collaborating with indigenous Machachi organizations in Mejia Canton to create a small food bank where those in most need can request basic food items. Thanks to this collective work, we have managed to help some 200 families in the last few days.
Earlier, we spoke to Italian sociologist and former head of United Nations Drug Control Agency, Pino Arlacchi, to discuss the United States' provocation and harassment against Venezuela, designating the country as a state sponsoring terrorism and offering a $15 million bounty for President Nicolás Maduro. Here's what he had to say.
The actions against Venezuela by the United States now are very close to a genocide attempt. And I'm very serious saying that. I never used this word. It's an extremely heavy word that must be used. If you sum up all the actions that the USA government is doing since more than 1 year against Venezuela, all of these amount to a persecution that is really close to genocide. You cannot block a country on its main source of income. You cannot do a financial blockade that isolates this country from all international transactions. You really cannot destroy its currency. Bolivar has been destroyed by the United States financial mafia through this illegal website called Dollar Today that respond to a group of American financiers and to people that are very close to Wall Street. Bolivar has been destroyed, and hyperinflation damaged heavily the economy of Venezuela. With the complicity of the main American rating agencies that put Venezuela's risk at the same level of Syria, meaning cutting off Venezuela from having a loan on the international market. All of this put together amount to a genocidal attempt. These military provocations will end up with a military invasion. I do not think that, because the military planners and the experts, they said many occasions that would be a defeat, would be wrong, would start as Iraq, they say, and end up like Vietnam. So they know that this will not work, cannot be used. But they are used means that amount to a military invasion. These sanctions against Venezuela are killing people. Tens of thousands of people are killed by the fact that it is impossible to import basic medicine for therapies like diabetes, like many others, because international banks refuse to process the transactions related to even Venezuelans' food and medicine, which should not be included in any sanction. But they do anyway that, because they are afraid of a reaction, of a retaliation by the American Treasury.
Moving on, Trinidad and Tobago will be releasing prisoners who fit certain criteria to reduce overcrowding amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
I can tell you that at the remand end, we have looked at non-violent offences, referred to as minor offences particularly, and the number that we've come up with so far from a cross-reference from the prison's data and the court is approximately 149 people.
Jamaica's COVID-19 cases have risen to 44 with 3 deaths, according to the Minister of Health.
And there are 21 females and 23 males who have been confirmed as having COVID-19 to date. In the meantime, we have 44 persons who are currently in isolation. 24 persons are under quarantine in a government facility. In addition, of course, to the 140 Cuban health professionals who are being quarantined, I think, until this weekend, when they will be allowed to engage the public health system to bolster our frontline defense.
Barbados has now confirmed 45 cases of the novel coronavirus, with 11 positives in 2 days. Acting Prime Minister Santia Bradshaw advised the country's just over 230,000 citizens that drastic action needs to be taken to stem the spread of the virus.
The Chief Medical Officer has advised that the number of positive test results in Barbados has now risen to 45. That is based on a total of 382 tests conducted in the country. And just to remind you, there were 34 positive tests in Monday's update. So in just the last 2 days alone, we have recorded a whopping 11 new cases. Barbadians, 45 is too high a number. But our fear is that it will not end there. The prognosis on our current trajectory, if we do not change course as a nation, is for this number to continue to rise at an accelerated rate over the course of the next few weeks.
Grenada, which has implemented stay-at-home measures and a curfew from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m., has confirmed 10 cases of the novel coronavirus as of April 1st.
I announced that one more laboratory confirmed case of COVID-19 on mainland Grenada has been diagnosed. This brings the total confirmed cases of COVID-19 to 10. The individual is a 58-year-old male who arrived in Grenada from New York on March 19th. He started experiencing symptoms on March 30th and was tested on March 31st. His symptoms are currently recorded as fever, cough, and general weakness. He is quarantined and being monitored closely. There are 2 other family members in the household, and they too are under quarantine, but are not exhibiting any symptoms of the virus to date.
Brazil's Supreme Court has issued an order to President Jair Bolsonaro to develop a cohesive coronavirus plan in the next 48 hours as the country registers more than 5,700 cases. Our correspondent Brian Meir from Sao Paulo has more.
Last night, the Brazilian government issued its official coronavirus figures, and the number of infections has risen to 5,700. And the death count has risen to 242, with 40% of all infections and deaths concentrated in the urban area of São Paulo. It was reported in the Forum magazine that Bolsonaro had a telephone conversation with U.S. President Donald Trump earlier today, and that Trump told him that he has to do something to keep people at home in Brazil. So even Donald Trump, who like Bolsonaro began denying that coronavirus was going to be a serious problem, is now ordering Bolsonaro to get with the program, get with what the rest of the world's doing. as he becomes more and more isolated, as more and more of his own allies jump ship, as the military is holding meetings to see how they can come up with a coronavirus plan despite Bolsonaro, Supreme Court Minister Alexandre de Moraes issued a court order last night requiring President Bolsonaro to present a cohesive anti-coronavirus plan within the next 48 hours.
Thousands of Army reservists have been put back into service in Peru to help combat the spread of the novel coronavirus. This is the first time in Peru's history that reservists have been called back to the barracks. The decision comes after President Martín Vizcarra declared a nationwide state of emergency and an overnight curfew. Over 1,000 cases of COVID-19 have been confirmed in the country. The Malian government has announced the turnout for the legislative elections held on March 29th was 35.73% despite the COVID-19 pandemic.
I would like to congratulate all those who contributed to the smooth running of the vote throughout the country. Turnout is still a challenge in our democracy. In spite of the awareness campaign and all the preventive measures taken against COVID-19 and the deployment of defense and security forces to ensure the security of the ballot, the participation rate for the first round was 35.73%.
Malawi has confirmed its first 3 cases of COVID-19. The government said all 3 cases were registered in the capital, Lilongwe. One of the patients is a 63-year-old woman who had recently returned from India. The other 2 are her relative and her domestic worker. With Malawi, 50 African countries have now confirmed coronavirus cases. There are only 4 countries, Lesotho, Comoros, South Sudan, and Sao Tome and Principe, that haven't so far reported any COVID-19 cases. The World Health Organization has warned leaders of African countries that there is an enormous gap in the number of ventilators across the continent.
So we don't have the actual number. I think what we can say without any doubt is that there is an enormous gap in the numbers of ventilators needed in African countries for this COVID outbreak. As we see the evolution of cases, as we see the number of countries where there is local transmission.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.
A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis, and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en la I.
Dotting the I. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Una travesía para descubrirnos. Buscamos conexiones perdidas.
No nos queda otra que luchar, porque no tenemos nada que perder.
Realmente es por todos.
Recorremos el mundo con Reportajes Telesur.
Welcome back. More news now. In the United States, the Democratic National Convention, where the Democratic presidential candidate is being appointed, has been postponed due to the coronavirus crisis. The Democratic National Committee announced that the convention is rescheduled from mid-July to the week of August 17th. The move comes after prospective nominee Joe Biden said he didn't think it was possible to hold a normal convention in July because of the coronavirus. In just 2 weeks, 10 million jobs in the United States have vanished due to the coronavirus crisis. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced that she would form a bipartisan House committee to oversee the Trump administration's response to the pandemic. Our correspondent, Jorge Gestoso in Washington, brings us the latest on the situation across the U.S. Jorge.
Thank you. At 1 p.m. Eastern Time at Port Everglades is scheduled to dock the first of 2 cruise ships that for many, many days were trying to find a place to dock, and they have on board about 200 passengers with symptoms of coronavirus. On the other hand, there is a 6.2 million figure of Americans asking for unemployment that if you added to the previous figure of 3.3 million of the previous week, we're talking about 10 million Americans unemployed. The situation is critical regarding the coronavirus and pandemic. We're talking that the people with cases of coronavirus went over 210,000. The dead people also overpassed 5,000, and the supplies for medical care are starting to shorten. The person of the president have said yesterday in a press conference that the coming days are going to be horrifying, very, very difficult days, and the Pentagon has already separated 100,000 body bags in anticipation on what could be the days to come. We get back to you now.
We thank our correspondent Jorge Gestoso for that report. Meanwhile, China has recommitted to helping Latin American and Caribbean countries, noting that it has sent its first team of medical experts to the region to assist Venezuela in the fight against COVID-19. The team left on March 29th and arrived on March 30th.
At the request of the Venezuelan government, China has recently dispatched an anti-epidemic medical expert group to Venezuela after taking into account Venezuela's actual anti-epidemic needs. The Chinese expert group will also assist the Venezuelan side in improving its anti-epidemic measures and the level of treatment, and make active efforts to prevent and control the epidemic in Venezuela and even Latin America.
China has slammed U.S. President Donald Trump's assertion that the country has misrepresented its COVID-19 figures. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying said U.S. politicians who accuse Beijing of concealing information are shameless and without morality.
The actions and behaviors of these American politicians are shameless and without morality. We have said many times that to slander, to discredit, to blame others, or to shift responsibility cannot make up the time that has been lost. Going on into lying will only waste more time and cause more loss of life. China has done its best to be open, transparent, and responsible. Through you, Bloomberg, I want to ask these few politicians in the U.S., can you stand up and tell the world what would have happened if the country that first discovered the outbreak was the U.S. rather than China? Would the U.S. handle it better than the Chinese government?
The European Union has pledged to raise up to $109 billion in loans to mitigate the economic impact of the coronavirus crisis in the bloc. The loans should be backed by 25 billion of guarantees committed by member states to the EU budget.
And this is why we introduced today SURE. SURE is Europe-supported, short-time work. It can mitigate the effects of the recession. It keeps people in work. It enables companies to return to the market with renewed vigor. The Commission will provide loans to those member states that need them to strengthen their short-time work schemes.
The EU chief also expressed great concern over a coronavirus emergency law in Hungary that has given far-right Prime Minister Viktor Orbán sweeping powers with no end date.
And I understand that member states may need to take emergency measures to address the immediate health crisis. But I am concerned that certain measures go too far. And I'm particularly concerned with the situation in Hungary.
Thailand has announced a nationwide curfew to curb the spread of the novel coronavirus as the country registers over 1,800 cases.
To enhance the effectiveness in suppressing the pandemic and to decrease the traveling of the Thai population, I will announce a mandate prohibiting people going out of their residences, known as a curfew, from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., effective all over the kingdom. I will emphasize that I will not let anybody hurt the staff or seize the opportunity to gain profit for themselves, which will further rub salt in the wounds of Thais already hurt from the outbreak.
India's Dharavi slum, one of the biggest ones in the world, has reported its first coronavirus death, raising concerns about the spread of the disease in Mumbai. The 56-year-old man who suffered from a renal condition had no history of foreign travel or coming into close contact with someone who had recently traveled abroad. Between 700,000 and 1 million people are cramped into tiny homes on the 2.1 square kilometer site where Dharavi is located in Mumbai.
There's a positive case in Mumbai's Dharavi and also a reported death. There are 300 flats and 90 shops near the location, and some buildings have been sealed. Samples of family members and other residents of the buildings are being collected, and according to the protocol, we have also initiated the process of contact tracing.
And finally, Ellis Marsalis Jr., a jazz pianist, a teacher, and a patriarch of a New Orleans musical clan, has passed away at the age of 85 after battling pneumonia brought on by the new coronavirus. His son confirmed late Wednesday that his father's death was sparked by the virus that is causing the global pandemic. Marsalis was born in New Orleans. He was the son of the operator of a hotel where Marsalis met touring black musicians who couldn't stand at the segregated down hotels where they performed. He played the saxophone in high school, and he also played the piano by the time he went to university. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And be sure to follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Stefania Bravo. Until next time.
From here to beyond.